Desmond was a very rich man. He had everything: big houses, many cars, and more money than he could spend in a lifetime. But he wasn't happy. He wanted someone to love him for who he was, not for his money. He was tired of meeting women who only cared about his wealth. He wanted real love. One night, as he sat alone in his mansion, he came up with a plan. He would pretend to be a taxi driver. That way, no one would know he was rich. He would be just a normal man, driving people around. If a woman loved him then, it would be true love. The next day, Desmond bought an old taxi. It was not new, and it made funny noises when it moved. But that was what he wanted. He dressed in simple clothes, nothing fancy, and started driving around, waiting to see who would enter his taxi. At first, everything was new and exciting for Desmond. He picked up people from different places and took them where they needed to go. Some were quiet, some talked too much. Some smiled at him, but Desmond knew they were only being polite. No one really cared about the man driving the taxi. One woman named Amina caught his attention. She was beautiful and seemed kind at first, but soon she started asking for money, small at first, then bigger amounts. She told him she needed help, but Desmond knew what she really wanted. She wasn't interested in him. She only wanted what she thought he had. Desmond gave her the money, just to see what would happen. As expected, she kept coming back, asking for more. It was clear she didn't love him. Desmond began to wonder if his plan would work at all. Maybe all women were the same. Maybe no one would ever love him for who he was. One afternoon, as the sun was setting, Desmond saw a young woman standing by the road. She looked tired but peaceful. She waved for his taxi and Desmond pulled over. Her name was Blessing. She was different from the others. She didn't talk much, but when she did, it wasn't about money or material things. She spoke simply and asked Desmond about his day, about life as a taxi driver. For the first time, Desmond felt like someone was talking to him as a person, not just a driver. When they arrived at her destination, Blessing didn't ask for anything. She thanked him, paid her fare, and walked away. Desmond watched her go, feeling a strange sense of peace. There was something special about her, something real. He hoped she would call him again. Days passed, and Desmond couldn't stop thinking about Blessing. He wondered if he would ever see her again. Then one morning, as he drove through the busy streets, he saw her walking on the side of the road. He pulled over and offered her a ride. Blessing smiled and got in. This time they talked more. Blessing told Desmond about her life. She worked hard, helping her family and trying to make ends meet. She didn't have much, but she was happy with what she had. Desmond admired her for that. She was humble, not asking for anything more than what she needed. As they talked, Desmond felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Maybe, just maybe, Blessing could be the one. Desmond wasn't sure yet if Blessing would love him if she knew who he really was. He didn't want to rush things. Over the next few weeks, he picked her up from time to time, taking her to work or home. Each time they talked more, and each time Desmond felt himself falling for her. One day, Desmond decided to test her, just like he had tested the other women. He told her about how hard it was to be a taxi driver, how he didn't make much money. He watched her face, waiting for any sign of disappointment. But Blessing only smiled softly and told him that money wasn't everything. She said what mattered was kindness, honesty, and love. Desmond's heart raced. He couldn't believe it. Here was a woman who didn't care about money. She cared about him. It was all he had ever wanted. Desmond knew it was time to tell Blessing the truth. He couldn't keep pretending forever. One evening, after dropping her off, he parked his taxi and drove to his mansion. He thought about how to tell her. Would she be angry that he had lied? Would she leave him when she found out he was rich? A few days later, Desmond invited Blessing to meet him at a small park. He was nervous, but he knew he had to do it. When she arrived, he took a deep breath and told her everything. He told her he wasn't really a taxi driver, that he was a billionaire looking for true love. He watched her face, waiting for her reaction. To his surprise, Blessing smiled. She told him she had fallen in love with the man, not the money. Desmond's heart sank. He had finally found what he had been looking for, someone who loved him for who he was, not for what he had. Desmond and Blessing continued to see each other, and their love grew stronger every day. Desmond introduced her to his world, but Blessing never changed. She remained humble and kind, just as she had been from the beginning. Desmond was eager to introduce Blessing to his parents. They had met many women over the years, but this time was different. He was certain Blessing was the one. She wasn't like the others who chased his money or status. She loved him for who he truly was, and that meant everything to him. One Sunday afternoon, Desmond invited Blessing to his family home. It was a grand mansion, sitting on acres of land, surrounded by high gates and lush gardens. Blessing had never been to a place so large, but she didn't let it overwhelm her. She was nervous, but her love for Desmond gave her strength. She dressed modestly, the way she always did, and Desmond couldn't help but smile as they drove to meet his parents. He was proud to have her by his side. When they arrived, Desmond's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Obika, were waiting in the grand living room. They were well dressed, with an air of elegance that spoke of their wealth and status. At first, they smiled at their son, happy to see him, but when they laid eyes on Blessing, their expressions changed. They didn't say anything, but Blessing could feel the coldness in the room. Desmond noticed it too, but he didn't let it stop him. He introduced Blessing proudly, telling his parents how kind and caring she was, how much she meant to him. He shared how they had met when he was working as a taxi driver, and how she had loved him even when she thought he had nothing. But as Desmond spoke, his parents exchanged looks. After he finished, his mother, Mrs. Obika, cleared her throat and spoke up. "Desmond, we love you and want the best for you," she began carefully. "But a girl like this, Blessing is it? She is not from our world. She doesn't belong here." Desmond was stunned. He had expected them to be surprised, maybe even a little unsure, but he hadn't expected such a strong reaction. "What do you mean, Mother?" he asked. His father, Mr. Obika, spoke next. "Son, you are the heir to a vast empire. You deserve someone who comes from a family like ours, someone who understands the responsibilities and expectations of a life like yours. Blessing, she's from a poor background. She wouldn't know how to fit in." Blessing sat quietly, listening. She felt the sting of their words, but she held her head high. She had never pretended to be something she wasn't, and she wasn't ashamed of where she came from. She knew her worth, even if they didn't. Desmond couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You don't even know her," he argued. "She's kind, she's strong, and she loves me for me, not for my money or my name. Isn't that what matters?" But his mother shook her head. "Love is not enough, Desmond. Marriage is about more than love. It's about family, status, and making the right choices for your future." Mr. Obika added, "We have connections, partnerships to maintain. The woman you marry will be a reflection of our family. Blessing might be a good person, but she's not the right match for you." Desmond was furious. "I didn't expect this from you," he said, standing up. "I thought you would be happy for me, happy that I've found someone who loves me for who I am. But all you care about is how it looks on the outside." Mrs. Obika tried to calm him. "Desmond, we're only thinking of your future. We want you to have a wife who can support you, someone from the same background, someone who understands this life." But Desmond shook his head. "I don't care about her background. Blessing is the woman I love, and that's all that matters to me." He turned to Blessing, who had remained silent the whole time. "Let's go," he said softly. As they left, Desmond's parents called after him, but he didn't stop. He was hurt, disappointed, and angry, but more than anything, he was determined. He wasn't going to let his parents' prejudice ruin the love he had found. Blessing was everything he had been looking for, and he wasn't going to give her up just because she didn't come from wealth. As they drove away, Blessing finally spoke. "I understand if you want to listen to your parents," she said quietly. "I don't want to be the cause of trouble between you and your family." Desmond took her hand and squeezed it gently. "No, Blessing," he said firmly. "You're not the cause of anything. They are wrong. I love you, and I don't care what they think. We'll find a way to make this work. Together." Blessing smiled softly, and Desmond knew he had made the right choice. His parents might not understand, but his heart was certain. He had found true love, and nothing was going to take that away from him. Desmond and Blessing continued their relationship despite his parents' disapproval. Weeks turned into months, and their bond grew stronger. Desmond loved Blessing more each day, and he had no regrets about choosing her over the wealth and status his parents had tried to tie him to. His parents, especially his father, Mr. Obika, were not pleased. Desmond had refused to break up with Blessing, and the fact that he spent more time with her only fueled their anger. His father, who had always been proud of Desmond's role in the family business, saw this as a betrayal. He had given Desmond everything, and now his son was throwing it all away for a girl who came from nothing. One evening, Desmond received a call from his father. The conversation was short but devastating. "Since you refuse to listen to us, you will no longer have access to the family's wealth. You are no longer welcome at our home, and as of today, you are no longer part of the company. You are on your own." Desmond was stunned but resolute. He had expected this might happen, and though it hurt, he was ready to face whatever came next. His love for Blessing was stronger than his desire for wealth. With nowhere else to go, Desmond moved in with Blessing. Her house was small and humble, nothing like the mansion he had grown up in. But to Desmond, it felt like home because Blessing was there. He had grown used to the luxuries of his former life, but none of that mattered to him anymore. What mattered was love, and as long as he had Blessing by his side, he believed he could face anything. At first, Blessing tried to make the best of the situation. She loved Desmond deeply and wanted him to be happy, but it wasn't easy. The man she loved had once had everything: wealth, influence, power, and now he had nothing. She could see that he was trying to adjust, but it hurt her to watch him live like this. Desmond found small jobs to make ends meet. He worked at a local garage, fixing cars for a modest wage. The pay was meager compared to what he had once earned, but he didn't mind. To him, this was just part of the journey he was willing to take for love. But as the weeks passed, Blessing began to struggle with their new reality. She had grown up with little, so the lifestyle wasn't new to her. What troubled her was seeing Desmond, a man who had once had everything, now living in such conditions. He had sacrificed everything for her, and while she loved him for it, the weight of that sacrifice was becoming too much for her to bear. Desmond sat in silence after Blessing's words. His mind was spinning, and his heart felt heavy. He had fought so hard for their love, given up everything, and now she was asking him to go back to the life he had left behind. Blessing's tears and the pain in her voice told him she wasn't happy, and that hurt him more than anything. She loved him, but she couldn't keep living like this, seeing him struggle every day. Desmond tried to hold on, but Blessing kept asking him to go back to his parents. It wasn't just one conversation, she brought it up again and again, always saying the same thing. "You deserve better, Desmond. You don't belong here. You need to go back." After many sleepless nights and heavy thoughts, Desmond finally agreed. He couldn't stand seeing Blessing so upset, and he didn't want their love to be the reason for her unhappiness. So he decided to do what she asked. He would go back to his parents. But deep down, he feared what that would mean for them. Desmond went to his father's house the next day. He hadn't spoken to him since the day he was stripped of everything. He wasn't sure how his father would react, but he knew he had no choice. If Blessing couldn't be happy with the life they were living, then he had to try something else. Mr. Obika sat in his large office when Desmond arrived. He looked surprised, but not shocked. He had always expected his son to return, and now that he was here, his father smiled with satisfaction. "So you've finally come to your senses," his father said, leaning back in his chair. Desmond nodded, feeling the weight of his decision. "I'm back, but I need your help." Mr. Obika's smile widened. "Of course you do. You've learned your lesson, and now it's time to set things right. But there's something you need to do if you want to regain everything." Desmond braced himself. He knew there would be conditions. "You know how important our family name is, and you know I have always made decisions to strengthen our legacy," his father continued. "My best friend and I have always planned for our families to be joined. I want you to marry his daughter, Evelyn." Desmond felt a lump in his throat. He had known this might come, but hearing it still hurt. Evelyn was not someone he wanted to marry. She was the opposite of everything he loved about Blessing. Evelyn was spoiled, obsessed with money, and always flashing her expensive clothes and jewelry. She was loud and cared too much about what people thought. Desmond had never liked her, not even as a friend. "I can't marry her," Desmond said quietly, trying to reason with his father. "She's not the right person for me." His father's smile faded. "You have no choice, Desmond. If you want to come back into the family, you must do this. Marrying Evelyn will keep our business relationship strong. Desmond accepted his father's condition. Marry Evelyn, return to the family, regain his place in the business empire. His future would be secure, even if his heart was not. He returned to Blessing's small house that night. He explained everything to her, the decision made, the marriage arranged. Blessing listened, her eyes filled with sadness. She had known this day would come, but hearing it was still painful. She had pushed Desmond to return to his family, but deep down she had hoped things would be different. Their love had always been against the odds, and now it was clear that love wasn't enough to bridge the gap between their worlds. Desmond and Blessing's love story ended with heavy hearts. Desmond married Evelyn as planned. The wedding was grand, filled with luxury and opulence, just like Evelyn had always wanted. Desmond felt numb, going through the motions while his heart ached for what he had lost. After the wedding, instead of moving to their own home, Mr. Obika insisted that Desmond and Evelyn stay in the family mansion. This was not what Desmond had planned. He had told Evelyn before that they would manage without house help, living simply and independently. But now everything was different. Evelyn was thrilled about staying in the mansion. The house was enormous and filled with servants to cater to every need. It had beautiful gardens, a large pool, and countless rooms. Evelyn had always dreamed of a life like this, and now it was hers. She embraced the idea of staying in the mansion with excitement. She loved the thought of having everything taken care of for her. The mansion offered all the comforts and luxuries she had always desired. She was used to having help for everything, and now she would have it all at her fingertips. Desmond, on the other hand, struggled with the situation. The mansion felt like a cage, a reminder of the life he had been forced into. He had lost his freedom and his true love, and now he was trapped in a life he never wanted. As time passed, Evelyn's true character began to show. Despite having many staff members at the mansion, Evelyn had no interest in doing anything herself. She didn't cook, clean, or help around the house. Instead, she spent her days shopping, going to clubs, and enjoying the lavish lifestyle. Desmond's mother, Mrs. Obika, became frustrated. She would ask Evelyn to cook or help with small tasks, but Evelyn always found excuses. She was more interested in socializing and living the high life. The staff were left to do everything, and Desmond felt the strain of living with someone so different from what he had hoped for. Desmond was aware of the situation, but felt powerless. He had given up everything for this life, and now he was stuck in a marriage that didn't bring him happiness. Evelyn's lifestyle was a constant reminder of what he had lost. Meanwhile, Blessing had been struggling with her own pain. She discovered she was 4 months pregnant. She hadn't known earlier because she had been having her monthly flow, which had masked the pregnancy. The child was Desmond's, and this reality hit her hard. Blessing was torn. She loved Desmond, and the thought of their child growing up without a father hurt her deeply. But she also didn't want to cause more pain. She knew how much Desmond had sacrificed and didn't want to break his new family apart. She kept the news to herself, unsure of how to handle the situation. Blessing knew telling Desmond would only add to his troubles. She was trapped between her love for Desmond and her desire to protect her unborn child from the chaos of his new life. Every day, Blessing wrestled with her emotions. The news of her pregnancy was a secret she couldn't share, but the weight of it was heavy on her heart. She wanted what was best for Desmond, even if it meant staying silent and letting go of her dreams of a future with him. Desmond couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness. He needed to see Blessing, to make sense of everything that had happened. He went to the old neighborhood where they had lived, hoping to find her. But when he arrived, he was told that she had moved out. Nobody knew where she had gone or how to contact her. Desmond was devastated. He felt as though he had lost everything again. The mansion that was supposed to be his new home now felt like a prison. And Evelyn's behavior only added to his misery. He spent sleepless nights thinking about Blessing, wishing he could turn back time. Meanwhile, Blessing struggled with her own heartache. She had confided in a close friend about her pregnancy, the pain of losing Desmond, and the uncertainty of her future. Her friend listened with sympathy, but grew increasingly frustrated with Blessing's decision to keep the pregnancy a secret. "You have to tell him," her friend insisted. "He deserves to know he's going to be a father. You can't keep this from him forever. It's not fair." But Blessing shook her head. I can't do that. I don't want to be the one to tear his family apart. He has moved on, and I don't want to make things worse. I'm trying to protect him, even if it means suffering myself. Her friend was angry, but look at you, Blessing. You're pregnant, with nothing to your name. How are you going to take care of this baby? You don't have money. You don't have a home. How will you manage? Blessing's eyes filled with tears. I don't know, she said quietly, but I have faith. I believe the Lord will provide for us. I can't rely on anyone else. I have to trust that somehow we will be taken care of. Her friend's frustration was evident. You can't just hope for a miracle. You need practical help. You need to think about your future and your child's. Blessing took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I know it's hard to understand, but this is my choice. I don't want to cause more pain. I believe in faith, and I believe that we will be okay. I have to believe that. The conversation left Blessing feeling even more isolated. She had already made up her mind, but the burden of carrying this secret was overwhelming. She wanted Desmond to be part of their child's life, but she couldn't bring herself to break up his new family. The pain of her loss was made even sharper by the uncertainty of the future, but her faith was the only thing that gave her hope. Desmond's father decided to host an important dinner, inviting some of his closest business partners and friends. It was a grand affair, with every detail carefully planned to impress. Desmond's mother saw this as the perfect opportunity to expose Evelyn's flaws to her husband, who had refused to believe how spoiled and careless she was. Despite the household being full of staff to handle the cooking, Desmond's mother made a special request. Evelyn should cook for the guests. She wanted to test her daughter-in-law in front of everyone, knowing Evelyn had no idea how to cook. In the kitchen, Evelyn was lost. She had never cooked a meal in her life and didn't know where to start. She wandered around the kitchen, unsure of how to even begin making a simple dish. The maids and cook, who would normally handle everything, stood by silently, following Mrs. Obika's strict instructions not to help Evelyn at all. Desperate to impress the guests and her husband, Evelyn decided to make a soup, something she had seen in restaurants but never made herself. She looked through the ingredients, completely clueless. In her confusion, she grabbed a bottle of beer, mistaking it for something that could add flavor. She poured it into the soup pot, hoping it would give the dish a unique taste. Hours passed, and Evelyn struggled to complete the meal. The kitchen was a mess, and she grew more frustrated by the minute. But there was no one to help her, no one to guide her. Desmond's mother ensured the cook and maids stayed out of sight, leaving Evelyn to her disaster. When the food was finally ready, it was time to serve the guests. Desmond's father proudly invited everyone to the dining table, believing they were about to enjoy a delicious meal. Plates were placed in front of the guests, and the aroma of the beer-laden soup filled the room. The guests eagerly took their first bites. The reaction was immediate, faces twisted in disgust. Some guests coughed, others pushed their plates away. The taste of beer in the soup was overpowering, and the dish was completely inedible. One by one, the guests stopped eating, their disappointment clear. The once lively dinner turned cold, and the atmosphere grew tense. Embarrassment hung heavy in the air. Desmond's father, mortified by the scene, looked around the table, unsure of what had gone wrong. The guests, insulted by the poor quality of the food, began to leave, offering half-hearted excuses as they made their way out. The dinner, meant to impress, had turned into a disaster. Desmond's father, now furious, demanded an explanation. He believed the cook had ruined the meal and was ready to fire them on the spot. But then Desmond's mother revealed the truth. It wasn't the cook who had prepared the food. It was Evelyn. She had been left to cook on her own, and the mess she had made was entirely her doing. Desmond's father was shocked. He had never imagined that Evelyn, the woman he had believed would be a perfect match for his son, could be so incapable of something as basic as cooking. For the first time, he saw her for who she truly was. A spoiled woman who had been living off luxury, with no skills, no sense of responsibility, and no desire to learn. From that day, Desmond's father's attitude toward Evelyn changed. He could no longer ignore her flaws or brush aside his wife's warnings. The dinner fiasco had shown him the truth, and his disappointment in Evelyn grew. The woman he had thought would bring honor to the family had instead brought them shame in front of his most important guests. Evelyn, meanwhile, was humiliated. She had tried to impress, but instead she had failed miserably. Her carefree attitude and lack of basic skills had been exposed for everyone to see. Evelyn couldn't ignore the growing distance between her and Desmond anymore. Days passed, and Desmond barely spoke to her. He spent most of his time outside the house, avoiding her, while she lived in luxury but felt utterly neglected. The tension between them was thick, and it gnawed at Evelyn. One evening, she finally confronted him. Evelyn wanted to know why Desmond wasn't acting like her husband. She asked him why he wasn't close to her, why he didn't touch her or even show affection. She had expected that marriage would at least come with some warmth, even if it was arranged. Desmond had held his silence for long enough, but now he was tired. He looked at her, his voice firm. He told her the truth. He had never wanted this marriage. It was forced upon him by their families, a deal to benefit them, but never for his own happiness. His heart had never belonged to her, and it never would. The words stung like sharp knives, cutting deep into Evelyn's pride. Desmond was clear. He didn't love her, didn't want her, and wasn't interested in pretending any longer. He told her to leave his father's house and never return. Evelyn, furious and humiliated, couldn't believe what she was hearing. She had been pampered all her life, always getting what she wanted, and now this man was rejecting her, throwing her out as if she meant nothing. Her anger boiled over, and without thinking, she picked up the phone and called her father. She told him everything, how Desmond had insulted her, how he refused to be with her, and how he had ordered her to leave. Her father, a powerful and proud man, was livid. The next day, Evelyn's father went straight to Desmond's father's office. He didn't waste any time with pleasantries. Sitting across from Desmond's father, he laid down his threat. If Desmond left Evelyn, he would pull all his business from their company. He made it clear that his daughter's honor was on the line, and if the marriage ended in disgrace, their entire business partnership would be over. Desmond's father felt a chill run through him. He knew the implications of what Evelyn's father had just said. Their companies were tied together in so many ways, and losing such an important business partner would mean financial disaster. The empire he had built over the years would crumble. Clients, contracts, and wealth. They would all disappear in a matter of weeks. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Desmond's father quickly apologized to Evelyn's father. He assured him that this would not happen again, that Desmond would stay with Evelyn. The last thing he wanted was to lose such a powerful ally in the business world. Desmond's father knew he had to keep the peace, no matter the cost to his son's happiness. Evelyn's father accepted the apology, but his trust had been shaken. He made it clear that he wouldn't tolerate any more disrespect toward his daughter. He left the office with the understanding that the marriage would continue, and Desmond would not be allowed to walk away from Evelyn so easily. Back at the mansion, Desmond's father confronted him. He made it clear that the marriage was not just a personal matter anymore, it was tied to the business, to the future of the family. Desmond, trapped between his father's demands and his own misery, had no choice but to stay in the marriage, even as his heart remained elsewhere. Evelyn, knowing her father had come to her defense, felt victorious. She believed that now Desmond would have no choice but to stay with her. But deep down, she knew that no matter what threats or business deals were made, Desmond's heart would never belong to her. One afternoon, Desmond's mother decided to visit the local market. She enjoyed going there occasionally, buying fresh produce, and interacting with the local vendors. It gave her a sense of peace, away from the mansion and all its drama. As she walked through the market, looking at the various items, her eyes caught sight of a familiar figure. It was Blessing. She was standing by one of the stalls, her belly swollen with pregnancy. Desmond's mother froze, shocked by what she was seeing. Blessing was heavily pregnant, but it wasn't just her condition that stunned her. Blessing looked worn out, her clothes old and loose, her hair unkempt, and her face marked with the signs of hardship. Desmond's mother's heart sank. Guilt washed over her as she remembered how everything had turned out. She walked over to Blessing, not knowing what to say at first. They stood face to face, the air between them heavy with the weight of the past. Finally, Desmond's mother apologized for everything. She had never wanted things to end this way. She wished Blessing and Desmond could be together, but now, seeing her pregnant with another man's child, she felt powerless. But then, Blessing gently corrected her. She wasn't carrying another man's child. The babies she was expecting were Desmond's. She revealed that she was pregnant with twins, a boy and a girl. Desmond's mother could hardly believe what she was hearing. Her eyes welled up with tears of joy. She had longed for grandchildren, and now she found out that she was not just expecting one, but two, her first grandbabies, and they were Desmond's. Desmond's mother could see that Blessing wasn't doing well. The exhaustion on her face, the state of her clothes, the worn look of someone who had been struggling for a long time. She didn't even hesitate. Without asking, she insisted on driving Blessing to her house to see how she had been living. As they drove to Blessing's small, run-down apartment, Desmond's mother grew more and more concerned. When they arrived, she felt a deep sadness. The place was tiny, dark, and clearly not fit for a woman expecting twins. There were cracks in the walls, the furniture was old and worn, and the air inside was heavy and stale. Desmond's mother could hardly believe that Blessing had been living in such conditions, carrying her son's children, and no one had known. Desmond's mother stood there for a moment, taking in the sight of the small space. She felt ashamed of how things had turned out. How had they let Blessing fall through the cracks like this? She looked at Blessing, who seemed embarrassed by her surroundings, but Desmond's mother wasn't going to allow this situation to continue. She had 5 houses scattered across different parts of the city, more than she needed. Without wasting any time, she decided that Blessing would move into one of her homes. It was a grand mansion, far from the struggles of the local neighborhood. She told Blessing to pack up her things, and within the hour they left the small apartment behind. When they arrived at the mansion, Blessing was overwhelmed. The house was massive, with beautiful gardens, spacious rooms, and everything she could ever need. Desmond's mother didn't stop there. She assigned Blessing a maid to help her with daily tasks and a driver to take her wherever she needed to go. She knew that Blessing's pregnancy with twins would be hard, and she wanted her to have all the support possible. Desmond's mother placed a gentle hand on Blessing's shoulder, telling her to rest and take care of herself. There would be no more struggling, no more hardship. She made it clear that if Blessing needed anything at all, she should call her directly. Desmond's mother's heart was filled with a strange mix of joy and regret. Joy because she was about to become a grandmother, and regret because of all the pain that had led them here. As Blessing settled into her new home, she couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. After months of struggling on her own, she finally felt some peace. She hadn't expected this kindness from Desmond's mother, but it was a blessing she couldn't ignore. With the twins on the way, she felt that maybe, just maybe, things were beginning to turn around. But in the back of her mind, she still wondered how Desmond would react once he found out the truth about his children. After taking Blessing to the mansion and making sure she had everything she needed, Desmond's mother decided to keep it all a secret. She didn't tell her husband, and she certainly didn't tell Desmond. She wanted to wait until Blessing gave birth to reveal the surprise. The joy of knowing that her son was going to be a father of twins, and that her first grandchildren were on the way, filled her heart with happiness she hadn't felt in a long time. For weeks, Desmond's mother visited Blessing regularly. She would leave the house without her driver, taking her own car so no one would follow her. Each visit made her even happier. She would check on Blessing's health, make sure the house staff was treating her well, and sit with her to talk about the babies. This secret gave Desmond's mother a reason to smile. She had been so sad because of Evelyn's character, the way her daughter-in-law refused to change, the embarrassment she had brought upon the family. But now she had something to look forward to, something that brought her peace. She couldn't wait to see her grandchildren and hold them in her arms. The thought of 2 little ones running around the house made her heart swell with joy. At home, Desmond began to notice the change in his mother. She wasn't as stressed anymore. She didn't seem bothered by Evelyn's spoiled attitude like she used to. Instead, she was always cheerful, humming to herself around the house. She would go out alone often, something she hadn't done before, and return looking peaceful. Desmond couldn't help but wonder what was going on. His mother, who used to be upset and anxious, now seemed lighter, happier. It didn't make sense to him. He knew that nothing had changed with Evelyn, who continued to live carelessly, ignoring the responsibilities of a wife. His mother had every reason to be frustrated, yet she was far from it. One evening, after noticing her sneaking out again and returning with a glowing smile, Desmond's curiosity got the better of him. He decided to ask her directly. Sitting with her in the living room, he gently asked why she seemed so happy all the time. He wondered where she was going on her own, without her driver, and what had changed her mood so drastically. His mother, caught off guard by the question, smiled. She looked at her son, knowing full well the reason for her joy, but she wasn't ready to reveal it just yet. She simply told him that nothing was wrong. She was just feeling happy, and she had chosen to spend more time by herself. She reassured Desmond that there was no need to worry. Everything was fine. Desmond listened but wasn't entirely convinced. He trusted his mother, but this sudden change in her behavior was unlike anything he had seen before. He let the conversation end there, though the questions lingered in his mind. He wondered what could possibly be behind this new spark in his mother's life. Still, his mother kept her secret. She wanted the moment when the twins were born to be a surprise, something that would lift Desmond's spirit and bring a wave of happiness to the family. She pictured the look on her husband's face when he found out they were grandparents, and the joy Desmond would feel when he saw his own children for the first time. For now she kept visiting Blessing, helping her prepare for the birth and enjoying the peace that this new chapter was bringing her. She knew that soon everything would change, but she was content to wait and let the secret unfold when the time was right. 2 weeks later, the long-awaited moment arrived. Blessing gave birth to her twins, a beautiful baby boy and girl. The labor had been tough, but the moment she held her babies in her arms, all the pain melted away. The sight of her newborns brought a deep sense of joy to her heart. They were perfect, tiny miracles, and Blessing was overwhelmed with love. Desmond's mother was equally overjoyed when she received the call from Blessing. Hearing that her grandchildren had arrived safely filled her with happiness she could hardly contain. She immediately decided to visit Blessing at the hospital, but she wanted to make it a surprise for Desmond. That morning, she told Desmond that she was visiting a friend who was sick in the hospital and asked if he would come with her. Desmond, having noticed his mother's good mood lately and still feeling curious about it, agreed to go. They drove in silence, Desmond wondering why his mother seemed so eager, yet not suspecting what was coming. When they arrived at the hospital, Desmond followed his mother down the hallway, feeling a little confused. But nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to see. As they walked into the room, Desmond was stunned. There was Blessing, sitting up in bed, cradling 2 tiny babies in her arms. He froze, his heart pounding. He looked at his mother, confused, trying to understand what was happening. Desmond's mother, with tears in her eyes, finally explained everything. She told him how she had found Blessing pregnant at the market, how she had been secretly taking care of her, and that these babies, the ones right in front of him, were his. Desmond's legs felt weak as he took it all in. He moved closer to Blessing, his eyes wide with disbelief and awe. He couldn't hold back the tears that were now streaming down his face. He was a father, not just to one, but to 2 beautiful children, twins. And the mother of these children was the woman he had loved all along, the woman he thought he had lost forever. The emotions hit him hard. He knelt by Blessing's side, overwhelmed by guilt and love. He apologized, his voice shaky, for everything that had happened, for leaving her, for the pain she had gone through. But Blessing, with her kind heart, told him there was no need to apologize. She understood everything and didn't blame him for any of it. She could see how much he was hurting, and all she wanted now was for them to move forward, as a family. Desmond held the tiny hands of his children, his heart full of both regret and love. He kissed Blessing's forehead, promising her that he would make things right. The day Blessing and the twins were discharged from the hospital, Desmond couldn't wait any longer. He had to tell his father the truth, and he wanted him to meet the grandchildren he never knew he had. Desmond drove home, his mind racing with thoughts of how his father would react. When he got to the house, he found his father sitting in his study, as usual, buried in paperwork. Desmond walked in, feeling a little nervous but determined. He told his father that they needed to go check something at one of his mother's mansions. At first, his father was not interested, waving it off as just another distraction. But Desmond was persistent. He kept telling his father that it was important and worth his time. After some convincing, Desmond's father reluctantly agreed to go. They drove in silence, his father growing more curious as they neared the mansion. When they finally arrived and walked through the door, Desmond's father was still clueless. But when he entered the living room and saw Blessing sitting on the couch, holding the twins, everything changed. Desmond's father stood there, his mouth open in shock. The twins were sleeping peacefully, wrapped in soft blankets. Desmond turned to his father, his voice soft but filled with emotion, and said, "Daddy, you are now a grandfather to two beautiful babies." The words hit Desmond's father like a wave. He stared at the babies, his eyes filling with tears. He had always loved the idea of twins. Back when he and Desmond's mother were younger, he had hoped they would have twins of their own. But it never happened. Now, standing in front of him were two perfect little grandchildren, and his heart swelled with emotions he couldn't control. Tears began to stream down his face. He walked over to Blessing, feeling overwhelmed by both joy and regret. Desmond's father gently touched one of the baby's hands, then turned to Blessing. He was deeply sorry for all the pain and hardship he had caused her. He knew that she had been forced out of Desmond's life, that she had been abandoned and left to fend for herself while carrying his grandchildren. Desmond's father, filled with guilt, apologized to Blessing, his voice trembling with sincerity. He couldn't believe what she had gone through because of the decisions he had made, and now he understood how wrong he had been. He told her that she was welcome in their family and that he would make up for everything. Blessing, still holding her babies close, accepted his apology with grace. She could see that he was truly sorry, and though the past had been difficult, all she wanted now was peace for her children. Evelyn had always been observant, even if she wasn't deeply involved in the lives of Desmond or his parents. Over time, she started to notice something unusual. Desmond, who had become increasingly distant from her, was always leaving the house, often with his mother and father. They too had once lived quiet lives at home since they were both retired. Now they were constantly going out together. Every day it seemed like they had some place to be, and it made Evelyn curious. At first, she didn't think much of it, assuming they were just visiting friends or relatives. But after weeks of watching this behavior, Evelyn grew suspicious. Why didn't anyone tell her where they were going? Why was everyone acting so secretive? Desmond's coldness toward her was one thing, but now it felt like even his parents were hiding something. She asked Desmond once, casually, hoping to get an answer. But he brushed her off, telling her there was nothing to worry about. His parents too didn't offer any explanations. It was like they were all in on something, and she was the only one left in the dark. This secrecy began to frustrate her more and more. Her thoughts swirled with anger and paranoia. She had always known that Desmond didn't love her, that their marriage was more of a business arrangement than anything else. But now it felt like she was being excluded from something important. Desperate for answers, Evelyn decided to confront the security man. He had been with the family for years and knew all the comings and goings in the house. One day, when she found him alone by the gate, she pressured him to tell her where Desmond and his parents were going every day. At first, the security man hesitated. He had been warned by Desmond's father never to tell Evelyn anything about what was happening. But Evelyn wouldn't let up, and under her relentless questioning, he finally broke down. He told her everything. He revealed that Desmond's parents and Desmond himself had been going to visit Blessing. Not only that, but they were visiting Desmond's twin children. Evelyn's heart sank as she realized that Desmond had fathered twins with Blessing, the woman he had once loved, and they had kept it a secret from her all this time. The security man begged Evelyn not to tell anyone what he had just revealed. Desmond's father had made it clear that Evelyn was to know nothing of the twins or Blessing, but the damage was already done. Evelyn was shaking with anger. Her frustration and jealousy boiled over. She felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious that everyone had conspired to keep this secret from her. Without thinking, Evelyn stormed back into the house. She was so angry, and her first thought was to call her father. She couldn't believe that Desmond had gone behind her back, that his family had accepted Blessing and her children while leaving her out of everything. The shame of it burned through her. She grabbed her phone and dialed her father's number, her hands shaking with rage. The moment he answered, she unleashed everything. She told him about Desmond's affair, about the twins, and how his parents had been sneaking around to visit Blessing and the babies behind her back. Her voice was full of anger and hurt, and her father, who was always quick to defend his daughter, grew furious on the other end of the line. Evelyn's father couldn't believe what he was hearing. His daughter had been humiliated, and he wasn't going to stand for it. Immediately, he called Desmond's father, his tone filled with rage. He told him that their business partnership was over, and he was pulling out of all their joint ventures. He couldn't believe that his daughter had been treated this way, and he wanted nothing more to do with them. Desmond's father, however, was no longer the man who needed Evelyn's father. He had seen the truth about Evelyn and her spoiled, selfish ways, and now, with his grandchildren in the picture, his priorities had changed. Calmly, he responded that he didn't care if the partnership was over. He told Evelyn's father that Desmond was done with Evelyn and that they didn't need their business or their money anymore. The call ended abruptly, with Evelyn's father left in shock. He had expected Desmond's father to apologize, to beg for the partnership to continue. Instead, he had been met with cold indifference. His anger only grew as he realized that his daughter had not only lost her marriage, but also the influence they had once held over Desmond's family. Back at Desmond's house, things took a swift turn. Desmond's father came home later that day, his face hard with anger and disappointment. He called Evelyn into the living room and without hesitation told her it was time for her to leave. The news hit Evelyn like a slap to the face. She stood there, stunned, unable to process what was happening. She had expected Desmond's father to support her, to rally behind her, but instead he was throwing her out. Desmond's father made it clear that her time in his house was over. He had tolerated her spoiled attitude long enough, and after everything that had come to light, there was no place for her in his family anymore. She had no ties here, no children, no love, nothing. It was time for her to go. Evelyn, humiliated and broken, had no choice but to pack her things. She moved through the house like a ghost, gathering her belongings in silence. She had always seen herself as untouchable, believing that her father's wealth and power would protect her from anything. But now even that was gone. With her bags packed, Evelyn left the house that had never truly been her home. She returned to her father's mansion, but things weren't the same. She had lost her marriage, her status, and her pride. Everything she had once held dear had crumbled around her, and all she was left with was her anger and the hollow comfort of her father's wealth. Back at Desmond's home, peace settled in once again. Desmond's parents were relieved to be rid of the weight that Evelyn had brought to their lives. They could now focus on what truly mattered: their family, their grandchildren, and the love that had been restored between Desmond and Blessing. The future seemed brighter now, with hope and joy filling the spaces that had once been darkened by secrets and lies. Dear viewers, what lessons did you take away from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with friends, and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.